Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That over there is Kenny Simpson. Coach Simpson, clinic season is upon us. Well, you're 2 in now, right? Two clinics?
Yeah, we're 2 in with, I think, 6 or 7 to go. So it's starting to get a little bit long, but that's the way it goes. And we really enjoy doing it. So it's different.
I was going to say, it's got to be a little different when it's your baby and you're getting to go out and preach your message. And
oh, yeah. No, it's fun. I'd never complain. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of time, but connecting with coaches is cool. That's also why we like the podcast. You get to meet new people and connect, and you're learning football together. I think when you have a passion, you can share with other people. Why not do that? So, but I left Phoenix, nice warm weather, and we flew back I got some bug, so I'm a little bit under the weather today, but I'll make it. Excited to have Coach on here and talk some football.
Perfect. Coach, great time to introduce you, but I'm going to let you do it yourself because I don't like screwing people's information up. So the floor is yours. Please give us your elevator pitch. Introduce yourself.
Okay, I'll try not to take too long, but yeah, my name is Allen Merrill. I grew up in eastern Montana. Had the wonderful opportunity to play a little NAIA D2 football at University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota. Met my lovely wife there, outkicked my coverage with her big time. Moved to Helena, Montana, out west, spent a year there substitute teaching. I was an assistant, an unpaid assistant on the 9th grade staff there at Capitol High School in Helena, Montana. Reigning 2A state champs in Montana. Good job, Coach Mahelish, for doing that again this year.
Let's go.
After that, I wasn't making any money substitute teaching, so I moved down to Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, which is right on the Nebraska border outside Cheyenne. I taught junior high and senior English there and coached varsity football there for 3 years. Also coached a little bit of basketball, a little bit of track. For the last 11 years, I've been in Gillette, Wyoming. I've been coaching at the junior high where I'm a teacher. I coached there for 7 years, I think, and then I got the opportunity to move up. And we had one high school in town, and then that high school split. We opened a second high school. I had the opportunity to coach at the varsity level for 2 years, and then we had a coaching change, and I've been down back at the junior high since then. The last 4 or 5 years, I spent a couple of years as a registered football official in the state of Wyoming, also. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm a registered basketball official as well. I know you guys have talked a lot about Mike D, the referee, has been on your guys' podcast, man. I like that guy's stuff.
That's a wonderful dude and a great resource to have, honestly. He made me better last year just reaching out and learning the ref side. So
just refs, man. They know ball. I mean, get with a good official and he'll talk as good a ball as any coach that you know. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Like I said, I like connecting with coaches. So thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Well, we love talking that sub-varsity level sometimes too. I think you get caught up in just X's and O's or just philosophy of ball. Like, it's good to just keep the topics broad. And I think this is one we need to cover more. So I'm glad you reached out and that's kind of your expertise. Kenny, before we go on any further, I always forget the quote of the week until the end. So let's just knock it out now. Whether it's where it's supposed to be or not, let's hear the quote of the week and then we'll move on.
Yeah, sure. Coach, before we get into that, I do want to say, man, I like, what we're going to talk about our topic, but I also like that you coach basketball. I think a lot of guys that do football, basketball, man, those guys have a different mindset. So I might pick that a little bit. All right, let's do quote of the week. So quote of the week, this is out of Team Themes volume number 3. So there are 4 volumes. This is out of the 3rd volume. And at the first part of each of the books, we do a section that is really dedicated for the coaches. So this is out of that section, out of that book. And it comes from Lou Holtz. It says, ability is what we're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. And attitude determines how well you do it. A lot of times to me, we're talking to coach here about whatever spot you're in, whether it's head coach of a varsity or it's an assistant coach of a varsity or it's head coach of a junior high or assistant coach of a junior high, whatever that is, that's going to be where you're asked to do your best. So your attitude is going to determine that. And I think that's what I'm looking for. We're blessed at my school to have coaches that are phenomenal. It took us a while to get our junior high kind of figured out. I left and we was kind of not in a great place, came back and put some really good guys down there, and we're able to get it sorted out. Man, that makes a huge, huge difference to have everybody on the same page, really good people at every spot. So I thought that'd be a good quote for us to kind of go with today. And then Daniel, I know we get some sponsor stuff and we'll get into what we're talking about.
Yeah. Let's not be too humble here. Coach Simpson, we haven't talked about it on the podcast. You got Coach of the Year this year, right?
On a few spots. Yeah, a few spots. I think, the big one, you got to win the state championship to get that one. But I got our conference and I got a couple other ones too. And I say it all the time when I go to clinics, very few guys get the chance to go 0-10 and be Coach of the Year. And so I've been in both camps. And I think if you coach long enough, that's kind of how that goes.
Well, we want to tell you congratulations from me. And I know all the listeners are probably saying it as well. But when you start talking about putting good people in good places and praising your staff, you're a big part of that, man. Like being a good guy, someone who fundamentally is sound and comes with good character. That's why people want to work for you. So congratulations to you on that. And don't be too humble when talk about all these good staff you have, because they want to be there working with you. So
I
good job on
appreciate
that.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sweet. So we will, Coach Simpson, if you don't mind, real quick, tell us some ways that we can simplify football for our staff and our athletes. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. You're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Not really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Del in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
Appreciate that, Coach. Always, it's great stuff. Kenny, I know you talked about Clinic Week a little bit to start the show. What can we look forward to here? What do we got around the corner here in February, late February, and then into March?
Yeah, so we'll be in Alabama here, middle of February the 21st, kind of around that time in Oxford. That's going to be a big clinic. Alabama football, they take it pretty serious down there, so a lot of coaches are coming. Then we're going to Ohio. They take it pretty serious too. Obviously, Buckeye fans. So a lot of coaches coming to that one. And then I've got Seattle, kind of actually south of Seattle. We had to move it to La Center, Washington, which is down in South Washington. That's going to be middle of February. Then Daniel and I finally get together in person in April. We got Boston and we got Milwaukee. Those are the last two we got coming up in the Gun Tea clinics.
And I am absolutely stoked. I'm playing the buy the tickets at the right time, right? You got to watch the Hopper. I don't know if anybody else uses that app. That's what we're using. Like, Kenny, I need to just reach out to your mom and be like, listen, hook me up with these good flight prices. But getting to Boston, I'm so excited to get there and spread some wisdom. But more than anything, I just want to network. Like I'm looking forward to the networking with different coaches in that area. I'm stoked for Boston and Milwaukee as well. A good buddy of mine that's a coach up in the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I think he's planning on making that trip too. So all in all, should be a really good couple weeks for me and hopefully your Gun Tea system as well. Well, Coach Merrill, let's jump into it here, man. Last thing, the new book. Kenny, tell me about the new book.
Yeah, man, excited. Anytime we put a book out, it's always, kind of humbling to see it happen. We've done it a lot, and so it kind of becomes routine, and I don't want it to ever become routine because that's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun to put those out, and there's nothing cooler than seeing other people read something that you produced. And so we put one out called the Play Caller's Guide, and basically it's a way to set up your offense, how to go from designing your offense to putting in if-then answers to calling, how do you script, how do you break down an opponent, trying to make it where it could work for any offense. So obviously we run Gun Tea, but I wanted this to apply to any coach who might call a game. So offensive coordinators or guys that want to be offensive coordinators or want to call games, or guys on the other side that want to see how we think. I think it'd be a really good book. It's, they usually go pretty quick. We only order a couple hundred, and we're offering, I think, a free PowerPoint and a free 2 weeks with the Offensive Coordinator Academy. So it's kind of a real special offer to get guys to, kind of continue to learn their craft. But it's over at my website, fbcoachsimpson.com. It's called the Play Caller's Guide, and I think it'll be a really good book.
That's awesome. It's always good to kind of get in the head of some of them play callers because you never know what they're thinking, right? I love watching. Obviously, we just had the Bills and the Chiefs the other day. We're 2 weeks removed with the record when this comes out from our recording date, but everybody was kind of mocking the Bills defensive coordinator on how do you let the Chiefs continue to run the same stuff they've been running for years. And it's like, well, because the whole playbook is open. You can't stop one play, then they'll hit you with the other play that they're good at, right? Like, I love watching common people try to break down football, and then when you really know, like sometimes a head coach or a coordinator is just going to run the same thing because it works so well. Why would I change, right? And then sometimes we can get overthinking it. So, all right, gents, let's jump into conversation here. So, Coach Merrill, we're going to start with you here. Question one, you talked about being a sub-varsity, a junior high coach now. So, first question is just kind of how does your sub-varsity team and your position in coaching, how does that fit within the scheme and the foundation of that upper varsity team?
Well, so here in Gillette, we have 2 high schools and also 2 junior highs. So each junior high works to feed one of the high schools here. And so we have 7th and 8th graders that are junior highs. And, we've got some great high school coaches here that come down. They give us our defensive and offensive systems. They give us, what they want. The offensive guys, the head coach is the offensive coordinator, and he says, run our formations, teach our kids formations, because if I get a kid as a freshman and he knows, what our 3-by-1 call is or our 2-by-2 and our personnel packages, then that's most of it. We keep our language pretty similar. It's pretty simple inside zone things. I mean, with 7th and 8th grade, we don't get too crazy with any of that stuff. But as far as X's and O's, we don't, we're not trying to get the kids to learn too much. But just try to run formations, personnels that the high school likes. As far as defense, we're just trying to get them used to the calls. I'd say we probably use a best comparison would be kind of a college 4-3. So just try to get the kids, hey, when I tell you this is our front. And for the next 4 years, when you're up there at the high school, your defensive coordinator, your D-line, or your linebackers coach, when you hear him yell this is your front. So we try to understand, fronts. We're a kind of a single gap control team, so try to get kids to understand playing gaps. Coach Simpson, you brought up basketball earlier. It's so funny. All kids, they want to do one-on-one matchups. I mean, it's one of the hardest things that we do in junior high is like, hey, listen, nose tackle, I need you in a 3 technique. I don't want you head up. I don't want you in the gap. I need you in a 3. I need you on that outside shade of the guard. I need you there. And that's sometimes that we spend so much time just trying to correct kids to get that in their mindsets, like with basketball, all these kids match up and everything's head up and no one understands, I have to have a leverage side. If I'm head up, that guy has 2 ways to go on me. I need to go one way. I need to be able to control his movement to a point. So yeah, we have some basic outlines. We're also given some freedom. There's been some coaches I know I've talked about. There was one coach here a few years ago before I really started. He said, the one job I want my junior highs to do is just develop a center. He was just a straight shotgun. And he goes, all I care about is having 3 freshman offensive linemen that can snap the ball. Because if I got three freshman offensive linemen that can snap the ball back there at 95%, I'm going to be doing okay. Now we try to do more than just that, but yeah. Sorry, I ramble.
No, that's okay, man. That is football coaching, right? Like that's perfect answer. Honestly, like he gave you some guidelines, he gave you your left and right limit, and he let you run with it. And he told you, hey, I need to see, for us, we really want to see like 2 quarterbacks in every class because, well, number one, in this day and age, one of them's probably transferring anyway, so you better find 2, right? But I don't have time to go down there and look at all the 7th graders throw footballs and start trying to teach. Like, so find 2 guys the simplest way, and which is usually just roll the balls out on the field and see who can throw it. And start teaching them how to be that leader. I talk about in like my head coaching packet and all that. I talk, I want a field general on each side of the ball. So it's cool that he's told you, hey, find me a center. Find me a guy who can snap the stinking ball. We'll take care of the rest, right, when they get to our level. But no, that's great. Left and right limits and a few, key pieces along the way. Coach Simpson, we'll go to you here. Same question.
Yeah, I like what Coach said. I mean, to me, I think it comes down to a whole lot of what's most important for you as a coach, and that's different. Coach mentioned that different coaches have different things that are most important to them. And one guy he mentioned was formation. One guy was personnel. One guy was, and we all kind of have that. But the fact that you're having those conversations, being this, in my mind, that's a healthy program. Like, here's what we expect you to do. Here's what we want you to have developed, and I think as a coach, if you're the head coach, so now you're looking at it from this end, working with a junior high coach, you need to figure out what's most important. And I think where we get in trouble is we either over manage or we give them too many things that make it really restricting, where they really can't coach and develop guys like they need to because you're trying to micromanage what they do, or we ignore it and don't give them any guideline. And there needs to be kind of a middle ground of, hey, here's most important for me in our program. We want to speak the same language. So if you're putting something in, we want to make sure it's in our language. Obviously, offensively, we have certain things that we want them being taught. But the other thing I give my coaches, I want as many of those kids to come to me as possible. Like, your job is not to run guys off, and your job is to probably baby them a little more than you need to, because I want as many of them to grow up before they get to me as possible. So that's something we would say. Other thing I put on here is, what are your goals at that level? Are your goals to, to develop 2 centers, like you mentioned, coach, or 3 centers, or 2 quarterbacks, or whatever it's going to be. That's something we'll mention to our coaches. Hey, I would like to have, these are our most important positions. For us, that's guards, on offensive line, and for us, that's quarterbacks. So that's what we want to develop. For us, other question you got to ask is, do you have a winning varsity program? I think if you do, if your varsity program is successful or has, traditionally been, pretty good, then I don't think wins matter a lot in junior high at all. I think that, if they win a couple games, that's fine. I think you have to look at it differently if your varsity program is not winning, because now those wins matter more because you have to kind of teach the culture of winning. And I think that matters a ton. The year mentioned at the start of this podcast, the year we went 0-10 here, our junior high program went 9-1, and it kind of bred hope into our program of what was coming. So I think you have to kind of see where you are as a program to how much winning does matter. I do think, ironically, with the first year I've ever coached where our junior high went undefeated, which is, you don't want to lose when you're in it. But I really don't like undefeated junior high teams just because it's, we would rather see them play some really good teams and get better than roll everybody up. But, either way, the other thing you got to look at is your coaches. Like, what kind of coaches do you have available for you in your program to put in the junior high? I think it's important you choose guys that have the same mindset that you do, because it's tough in the junior high level because a lot of times you get 1 or 2 coaches. You get the coach who's wanting to move up, who's really ambitious. That's not a bad thing, but there are conversations that need to happen there about, hey, we're not going to sell out to win. We want to develop kids, and that can become really difficult. When I coached junior high, long time ago, I wanted to win because I was ambitious, and that's how I wanted to move my own career forward. That doesn't necessarily bode with what's best for our program when I want to develop more kids. So you got to have that conversation. The second type of coach you have in junior high is usually the guy who didn't want to do varsity for whatever reason. Not a bad thing, but a lot of times we're going to make sure that guy is ambitious enough to continue to develop our kids. And so finding a good junior high coach can be very, very difficult. And usually if you find a good one, they're not going to be there very long because they're going to eventually move to another seat. So we're always looking for who's our junior high coach. Okay, who's the next one? Who could be the next one? Because that seat tends to be a moving type seat unless you get really, really lucky where you find a guy who just really enjoys that age group.
Yeah, those are all great points. I'll kind of go back to what we talk about being most important, getting kids to the next level. I don't know that that's emphasized enough. And you really kind of hammered it home there in the end. It always seems to be the coaches that are so caught up on winning junior high football games that they run off the kid who's a nobody right now, right? But we have no idea when that growth spurt's going to hit, who that kid's going to turn into, right? They kind of talk about like you can never give up on a kid. It might be the summer of his junior year that he grows 6 inches and becomes an absolute stud for you. But if you run him off in junior high, you'll never get there, right?
That's a great point, Coach Chamberlain. I like to look at kids because we've had kind of a down couple of years, to be honest. We've had some competitive teams. We've got some kids that have grown exponentially with their performance and their understanding of football, but man, a lot of them are still prepubescent. I mean, there are times I look at a huddle full of kids, and we've just played a really tough game, and maybe it's not successful in the terms that you would call it. But I look at them and say, hey, stick with this. Who you are at 12 and 13 is not who you are going to be at 16 or 17. Thank God for that, right? Like, thank God we are not who we were at 17 and 18, right? So you just got to tell those kids to put in the work, but you got to play the long game. And Coach Simpson, you just made some great points there. I mean, numbers is huge. I mean, we sent a class of 40 kids up to our high school last year. We had 40 freshmen at our high school, and I think that's huge. I will put a jab in though. I hope you've got good freshman programs. There was a class I sent up a couple of years ago, maybe not huge, but I had to referee a game. I was officiating a game because it was during the school day. It was the only time we could get the freshman game in, and I got out of the school, went over there, and during after a play, the coaches or the officials are huddling together, and the one official refs a lot of basketball, great official, says, "Does anybody notice that 11 kids were on offense and they went and scored. And then the same 11 kids ran out on kickoff. And then the same 11 kids were out on defense. And there was, 20 kids standing on the sideline. So, I mean, it's so hard that, you want to be competitive. You want successful sub-varsity programs, but yeah, you gotta think development first. So when I was at the high school here in Gillette for 2 years, part of my responsibilities was also coaching. I coached the freshman team 1 year. I went and coached the freshman games because we don't have individual staffs. I mean, you're a varsity coach. You do the JV games, you do the freshman games, and some of those JV games, man, you just got to get kids in. I remember one time I was coaching JV and I had a kid, a freshman who, because of our circumstances, was playing some varsity safety as a freshman in our largest classification of football because we just didn't have anybody else. And I looked at him and said, "Hey, guess what? You have to play weak side linebacker because, dude, you can't fill. You got to learn how to fill here because there's times where I'm going to need you coming down from a too high safety look, and you're not very good at it right now, and I get it. But if I put you in at will linebacker, you're going to struggle, but you're going to have to step and fill and scrape and do all these things that are going to help you get better later."
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Like,
I'll throw in one more thing that I was taking some notes here. I think the big thing sometimes we lose in junior high football is, and I think Bobby Knight gets credit for this. Do you want to teach them plays, or do you want to teach them how to play? And that's been my biggest thing as I've been at the junior high. So I teach in my building. I coach football and basketball in my building. I tell all my kids, like, and I tell this to adults: do we want to teach them plays, or do we want to teach them how to play? And I think we want to teach them how to play.
for sure. I can remember calling my first year in coaching. I ended up getting to be the OC for our junior high team, right? Like the head coach of varsity, small school. So he was the head coach for everything. It was really, really hard. And in fact, I failed at being a coach that year because I was really good at calling the play where we handed the ball to the kid that's been held back twice, who's already shaving, and he's in 7th or 8th grade, right? Like that was the easy play call. And he would run for 75 yards a touch. Like that was not hard. It's playing the new NCAA game on rookie mode, right? Like, yeah, this is super easy. But there's a whole bunch of kids over there that weren't getting any love. And what made it worse is that if you ever pulled that plug and said, no, we need to start developing, you have those parents who are used to winning and used to watching a kid break every play. Why aren't we just handing it to him? Well, it's hard to bring your mindset back down to that development mindset of, we're going to lose a game here and there, right? Like, and I mean, that year we lost some anyway. He was kind of it. He was the key piece. When you talked about being on defense, he was out there too when he could be. He's like an asthmatic kid, so he couldn't stay out there all the time. But they just ran away from him, and then they could go score touchdowns. And so it's just an arms race or, just kind of a sprint. Anyway, so I definitely failed my first year. It's hard not to do that. It's hard not to feel good about being a coach when you can just hand it off to one kid and let him go do his thing. So
Yeah, Garrett Mueller. You guys know Garrett Mueller. He's out of Minnesota. He's a Tony Holler disciple. I got to throw a Tony Holler pitch on there. Like I started drinking the Feed the Cats Kool-Aid really hard a couple of years ago, and Garrett Mueller out of Stewartville, Minnesota. He said at one time, he goes, if we're not going to we look at everything through our lens of, is this going to be a good experience for any kid that wants to try football? And so, like I said, I'm in a junior high. I have 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, maybe that 14-year-old kid that is held back and shaving. And that's the way I look at it, right? Like everything we're going to do, can I have a positive experience? Can I build the most positive experience I can for these kids? Because if I'm going to ask them to do something that's not a positive thing, or it leads to a positive thing, then I'm going to cut that out.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great way to look at it. Let's jump on to the second question here. We're talking about freedom. How much, as a sub-varsity coach, how much freedom do you have in what all you can do? And I have this question because, like, we had Cameron Palmer on, who was the freshman OC at Bixby for a long time, right? For several years. And everybody knows about the Bixby offense, and it's doing great things. And he's at the freshman level, and he had basically complete freedom. So I kind of want to compare where you're at, where Coach Simpson puts his guys. What does that look like in your state?
For me, like I said, I have a simple playbook. We try to teach formations, and then we just try to teach how to play. We're trying to get. This year, I had an 8th grade group that was not a great. And again, this year was kind of a new thing for me. I worked with the offensive line, and I've dabbled in that, but that was kind of a challenge, a reach for me. We didn't have Coach Simpson. You were talking about who's available for coaches. We just didn't have a guy with a great offensive line background, and I've coached long enough where I'm kind of like, okay, I know some of this, and this is a great learning and a growth opportunity for me. Um, but I mean, I was able to have an 8th grade group of linemen to where like we can break the huddle, run up to the line, and we can get our combo calls. I mean, I had a center that he was a little light in the can. I mean, he was he was getting pushed around a lot, but I mean, we broke the huddle, and he could look at the guards on either side and the tackles and say, "Hey, this is our combo. Get up to backer," and we could do all that, and that's a huge win in my mind. Like if you're giving sending 5 linemen, 6, 7, 8 linemen up to the freshman team where they understand, hey, these are our combos against certain fronts. Um, so yeah, we have some freedom, but like I said, there's definitely a pretty there's a good skeleton that we work off of. It,
That's the
you
way
know,
it should be done, though, right? I mean, I know that some people are really caught up in certain plays. Maybe that's all you're going to work. And this is a really good question for Coach Simpson because he is bringing them into the gun tee, right? It is a very specific offense to where some guys are running these very multiple offenses. Like, hey, if you want to run zone this year, run zone. We don't care. Like, they're going to run a little bit of that up here too. If you want to throw mirrored routes, you want to throw wide cross, throw whatever, right? Because they're going to see a little bit of everything at the next level. I kind of like what you said, like teach them how to play football, how to make a read, how to do this, how to do that. So, if we can teach eyes and fundamentals, that's great. Coach Simpson's in a different place. Hey, listen, you're about to come up here and pull. You're going to run buck. Quarterbacks, you're going to read a guy and throw RPOs or run the ball. So I need those fundamentals more so than running inside zone. Inside zone doesn't do much for Coach Simpson, right? So,
right.
Coach Simpson, I kind of want to hear your part on it too. How do you instruct? You talked about having a good staff down there. So how are you making them good? What are you doing for left and right limits for your guys? You're muted, Coach.
Yeah, I got you. I think a lot of it is being on the same page. For us, obviously, we've got a system that we run, and we've been running it for a while, so that makes it, I think, a little bit easier. But if you watched our junior high team play year to year, then watch our varsity team, while we look similar, because we are running the same stuff, we don't look the same. This year our junior high group, I think the quarterback ran for 1,200 yards. Because that's what he was. He was a more athletic kid, and so gave the coach the freedom to, you're going to call our stuff. I mean, it's our offensive system, but I'm not going to limit you on formations you want to kind of major in, or what concept you think is better. Or I've had our junior high coach before that they're running something that looks a little different. And he said, "What do you have this? What do you call this? What's it look like?" And so, well, here's how we would call that. And he said, okay. So a lot of times we're on the same page. He had a different, they were running GT in our junior high, we don't really run that much in senior high because of personnel issues. And so it's not something that we kind of limit them. And then defensively, same deal. We're going to be on the same page with what we're calling things, but they're going to look different based on what they have. I thought our defense this year in junior high was very, very good. But if you watch them play versus watch our varsity play, it looks different, and it's not a bad thing. It just means they have different kids than we have. So, when I'm looking at your question, Daniel, I just said, if the coach has shown that they're going to be bought into what you're bought into, I think you better give them all the authority to be able to do what they need to do. In our junior high games, some years the coach gets nervous having me around, so I won't even be near. I'll go up in the box or I'll go out of the way. This year's coach, we were pretty close. So he said, I kind of want you on the field, especially for like the head coach, because his first year being a head coach, like time management, just kind of reminding him about timeouts and reminding him about different things. But I really didn't say much at all with offense unless he asked. I didn't say anything because I thought he had earned the right to do that. If you're at a school where that's not that way, then there are some conversations that probably need to happen. And some guys that are listening to this podcast are super jealous because they have no authority over their junior high team. So there's a lot of issues that go on with that. But in my opinion, in a perfect world, that coach would have all the authority, understanding that we are on the same page as far as our goals.
It comes down to coach development for me at that point too. We've talked a lot about developing kids, but I have no doubt, Coach Simpson, that you're going to send an offensive coordinator off to be a head coach somewhere else in Arkansas, right? Like your guys are going to go take over their own programs. They've been guided by someone who's doing obviously an amazing job. We already discussed Coach of the Year. What was it, 13-1 this year? Like that's a heck of a season, and good coaches are going to get there. Now, I say all that just say that those coaches are going to be requested. People are going to be saying, hey, I want to interview your OC, your DC. I want them to come be my head coach. But if we never have the next guy in waiting practicing how to stack play calls, how do I solve those problems with a tag, an RPO, with a shot down the field, because they've never really got to do their own thing. They haven't made their own mistakes. Then we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. Because, the guy who's doing it really well right now is not always going to be there. Now, I think, Kenny, you call your own plays on Friday night right now. But, defensively, it's the same thing. When does your DC leave? And Coach, same for you up there. When does your chance get called back up to take over the reins of play calling at the next level, right? So you've got to go through the trials and the fires so that you know what you're doing when the bright lights come on. And if you don't ever give those guys that freedom, just go out and screw up. Go make mistakes. No one cares. It's great.
I think I like that talk about coaching development because I think, I don't know, this is probably the rural West might be a little different. I know you're in Oklahoma, and Coach Simpson, I'm dropping where you're at right now, but there's not a school nearby where I am. Like you're gonna pick your family up and leave hundreds of miles if you're moving to another town. And I hope, man, I kind of going down a dangerous track here. I wonder if anyone in Gillette will hear this, but I think one of the things we've done ourselves a disservice is when you get good coaches in at a high school program and they're entrenched and there really isn't any development up. I really think one of the things we could do better within programs, I don't know if Coach Simpson, have you ever done this before, but you've got a guy that he's been good, he's proven himself, but he's just been here a while, and you need to give that guy a sabbatical. And maybe you send him down to the junior high and have him take, where it's a little less time. There's a little less game planning. There's a little bit of, less this and that things. And then you bring a guy up from the junior high to shadow a varsity coach or a JV coach or somebody that's really good. And I just don't think you have as much, because where I am is fairly small knit communities, right? And I think you need to do a better job of not letting the coaching waters get stagnant, but circulate that pool of coaching talent that you have through multiple levels and tiers of your program, not just that top tier.
Yeah, stagnant coaches, we see it at head coach, we see it at coordinator, we see it at people who just end up being, lifelong assistants. Once again, if that's your dream, if that's your goal, it's something I stole straight from Kenny. If you're assessing your staff and that's what they want to do, who are you to tell them that's wrong? That's great if that's what you want to do. I don't think it should be the norm. I think we all should be lifelong learners and trying to improve. But if, hey, you know what? There's one good thing about always being an assistant. You're rarely going to get fired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Head coach goes, he's probably taking a coordinator with him, or the next guy installs his own coordinator. So you're without a job at either of those positions. Hey, the corners coach, he's got a good job. He's secure. All right, let's jump into this last question here. And that is kind of what does that off-season schedule look like for you? And really I want to do the compare contrast to your varsity guys. So is there the same time commitment for these younger guys who have way more stuff going on in life that maybe their parents aren't ready to be that committed? What does that look like, your sub-varsity guys, your junior high teams versus the varsity guys?
So, the varsity coaches, they just wrapped up their season. They kicked their kids out doing other sports, wrestling, basketball, indoor track. And and then they'll get together with their high school kids and do a couple of spring practices. There's no true spring ball here, um, but there are some spring practices that the state lets us have, and then they go to a team camp. Last couple of years they've gone up to Montana State, so they'll do like a couple of days at the end of May, and then a couple of days in June to get prepared for that team camp, and then they do pretty sure it's a 4-day week, sprinting and weight room uh, at the high school. Our off season is a little different. I get rid of my kids at Halloween, and I kick them out, and then they start wrestling, and we try to get as many of those kids out for wrestling as we can. And got some kids on this year's 8th grade team that tried wrestling for the first time ever. Some of the linemen, and I just know they're getting better from it, and I just hope they're having a good experience. So then, yeah, we start up junior high boys basketball right after the first of the year. And then we'll get done about March, and then we'll have soccer and track kicking up, and we'll try to get, I'm in my building. I try to get around as much as I can. I know my football kids. I'm talking to them about, are you wrestling? Are you coming out for basketball and me? Are you going to do track, or are you going to do soccer? I hope, soccer's a fun sport, but I want you running track because I want speed. I want speed development. But then, we don't do a whole lot of spring practices. We basically have an open weight room that we run 3 times a week in the summer, and we kind of divide that up. Again, I've been drinking Tony Holler's Kool-Aid. I'll shout out to him again. I think the Feed the Cats model sprint-based football is where it's at. We'll take a group of last year was great. We had 40 kids show up for weight room pretty consistently. So I'll take like a group of 20 kids, probably our 8th graders, and I'll get them on the track, and I do Tony's X Factor workouts, and we sprint. And kids love it. Kids love jumping. Kids love sprinting and racing and competing and running around codes and stuff like that. So we just try to get them fired up as much as we can for 45 minutes. Then the 7th grade, during that first 45 minutes, is half an hour is in lifting, and we teach simple lifts. Like we're trying to just get a front goblet squat, just trying to get because some of these kids are they don't have muscle mass yet. They're just ligament and tendon, and so we're just trying to get some flexibility in those kids and get some of that going, try to introduce them to the weight room. Right, we want the weight room to be fun. I mean, it's hard work, and it's we certainly don't want to make 7th graders like the Swamp Boys from Florida, the Tebow days. And then so after that 45-minute session, we'll switch. I'll bring my 7th graders out, and we start teaching them for running, because it's always amazing to me. I got this kid that wants to play basketball, wants to play football. I get him in the 7th grade, and he can't skip, and so I got to teach him. I got to teach him, form running and do all
Those
this.
are the
And
best. Those are the best to do in the middle of a varsity practice. You know what I mean? Like and you're like, son, we got some work to do.
Well, and I'm big on like my big cats, like my lineman kids. I've really been bought into these kids. Like, I don't want you to just be this hog. I want you to be this lion. I want you to think of yourself as this tiger. Like, we're gonna break the huddle, and I want you to go hunt. And I think some of the kids have really bought into this. Like, no, I'm not this, Billy Bob slob. I want to be this big apex predator. And so and I think some of the, even the lineman kids really like showing up and doing the sprint work. I'm certain as, no way in hell am I going to make them, jog a mile, all those old or 110 gassers or whatever, that kind of stuff. But, so that's our off season. We don't do a whole lot of football stuff. It's really hard to, do an organized or a spring ball practice. But then we also open up, because I'm a basketball coach. You sprint for 30 minutes, you're going to lift for 30 minutes, and you're going to bring a banana or a peanut butter sandwich. We'll rest for a half an hour, and then I'll have the gym open, and we'll have open gym for basketball. And even if you don't want to try out for the team, come play basketball, like be active, and do that type of stuff. So that's my off season.
It really sounds kind of like, just keep them bought in. It's the same philosophy you were talking about earlier. Keep kids going to the next level. Just keep them bought into the off season. Make it fun.
Keep them with their buddies, and if they're with us at 7 a.m. till 10, 11 in the morning. I'm keeping them busy, and they're not out on the streets of Gillette, messing around town or terrorizing people at the Walmart during the summer.
Right.
I think I'm, trying to help keep them on the straight and narrow a little bit.
Absolutely. Kenny, same question to you. Just kind of, what does that offseason look like for your younger guys, your sub-varsity guys?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went more general. I love how Coach kind of went into it. But I'm gonna give you a real quick story. I don't know if it was where I think it was frogs or crabs. I put it in one of my first books. The first book I wrote, actually, the story of, if you put a pot of boiling water and you take a frog and you dump it into the boiling water, it's going to jump out of the water. I mean, it's going to escape and not want to be in there. But if you put a bunch of frogs into normal water and you slowly raise the temperature, they'll sit in there until they actually die. They'll actually boil to death and won't ever leave the pot of water because you're slowly turning it up. To me, that's what junior high and youth football and sub-varsity football is how can we take these kids and slowly get them ready for varsity football? I think that's kind of the mindset for me with junior high is what Coach is doing is awesome. Those kids really like that, and not everybody has that kind of ability because of the scheduling. But to me, is what do we expect at the varsity level? Well, let's bring that down a notch for junior high, and then let's bring that down another notch for seventh graders, and let's bring that down another notch for whatever other level you're able to be in. The number one thing he mentioned over and over and over was these kids love that time. These kids enjoy that time. These kids enjoy this. I think that's the key is, let's make sure they enjoy it. Let's teach them where we want them to get and slowly raise it up. So by the time they're on the varsity level, they understand that, hey, there is an expectation. It's going to continue to rise the longer I'm around. But we're not here to get rid of kids or lower our numbers. So in my mind, whatever you're able to do in the off season, that's up to your situation. Like we don't control that. How often do you get your kids? How much do you get to see them? I think there does need to be some time commitment. I think that if a kid's going to be involved in a sport, there needs to be some expectation of you can't just not show up and get to play. So let's find a line there where we can slowly kind of rev up what that expectation is the longer they go. And I think that's the key.
That's awesome, man. Guys, both excellent ways to look at it. Coach, I also enjoyed your in-depth breakdown of kind of how you're doing it. Kenny, 100% with the frogs. Like they use that metaphor for so many things, but it's so true. You're talking about changing culture. You talk about installing culture. Getting kids in the weight room. That's really hard to go put someone in a full varsity workout. That's hard, right? Hard for them. They're going to be sore. They won't want to do it. But if you can break them in, and Coach Merrill, you kind of talked about it too, just they don't have any muscle mass. Why are we going to go in there and try to break them down right now, right? Get them installed into that weight room lifestyle and develop yourself better players later.
Well, and I think that too goes to practice too. If I could just, God, sorry guys if I'm keeping you too long, but I just keep going.
No.
So like we have a junior football program here, and my oldest two sons have gone through that. And so sometimes, and I don't mean to be critical, but sometimes you'll have these coaches that want to have a 2.5-3 hour practice for 10-year-old kids. And again, this is where I've kind of bought into the sprint bait you folks. Like, no, I'm going to get these kids in, and I'm going to teach them what they want to know. We're going to make it game-like, and it's not this 4-hour grind.
Right.
I know this stuff is work and it's hard work, but we got to take that grind word out of it. We don't want anything here reduced to powder, right? So I'm an English teacher. Like I love these coaches and these people that talk about the semantics and the meanings of words. Like you don't want this to be a reduction to small particles in a grind like that. We just got to get that out of there.
It's my guy right here, Daniel. I love it. I mean, you're a military guy. Here, real quick. I don't want to interrupt you, Coach. I'm going to get right back to you. I promise. But real quick point I want to make here, because Daniel, you're in the military. Coach hit it. It drives me nuts when we say things like grind or we compare football to war. Like those are the two things that drive me the most insane. Daniel might go to war and die. We're playing a game. I'm sorry. I'll give it back to you, Coach.
Yeah. So, Coach Chamberlain, again, thank you for your service. And Coach Simpson, it means a lot hearing that from a guy that's coached a while. I'm not trying to date you or anything like that, but that means a lot to hear that because, again, at my staff in places I've coached, I'm that small voice. I'm saying, no, we don't need to grind this. This is not because I mean, and there are some coaches I still work with where, oh man, we're losing. Well, we need our jumping jack lines to be better before the game. We just need to be more disciplined. I said, no, I can put a really crappy football team out there that's really good at jumping jack lines. I mean, we can look organized, but that doesn't mean we're going to be good football players. It doesn't mean we've learned how to play. And I remember there was a point where junior high scheduling is crazy, and I had an AD at the time got mad at me because I only had enough time. Like I got my team, and we had one practice, and then we had the game, and I didn't get game pants out to the kids. I just had them wear their practice pants, and you guys know the old school white stained practice pants, and he comes up to me after, what are we doing? We're looking out there, said, Coach, you really want me to take, 45 minutes out of practice to go get the game pants handed out? Like, no, and if we play well, what does it matter if what we look like? I want us to play well. Like, sure, kids like buy into the jerseys and moms want the pictures, and I understand that's all part of it, right? But my biggest thing is I don't care what it looks like. I want between the whistles to look good. I want it to look like football, and for the
Yeah.
kids to have fun doing it.
That is the I don't know if politics is the right word, but that's the real life part of boosters buy something they want to see it used, right? Like there's absolutely, and that's part of the support. They're going to support you in ways you want, and they're going to support you in ways that you didn't really ask for, but you're going to do it anyway. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how the world works, right? We got to give a little to get a little. So, let's jump into this last part here. What not to do as a coach. Coach Simpson, can you give us our lesson?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've kind of hit on here, and again, I'll speak from it from a varsity kind of point here. Coach, I think is doing a heck of a job in his program. We're blessed to have a good coach in our junior high program. I think where you get in trouble, and this is where a lot of coaches, the first time they go from an assistant coach to a head coach, because it's hard to just say it on a podcast how much pressure they feel. Like until you've sat in that seat and you've had to make the hard decisions, you really don't understand it until you're there. And I don't mean that as a knock to guys that haven't been there. That's no insult taken. Until you've ever been in the seat of leadership, you don't know how that seat feels. I'll kind of put it that way. And Daniel, you've been in the military, so you understand, like when you're the guy making the decision that's going to affect everybody, there's a lot of pressure on those decisions.
Absolutely.
So because of that, kind of starting from that mindset, junior high programs or youth programs or whatever other sub-varsity program you want to kind of stick in there, there's usually one or two ways guys handle this wrong. The first way is they micromanage. Everything's got to be done a certain way. I was that way when I first took over because I wanted certain things to be done X way, and I was nervous about it making a mistake here or there or whatever that might be. And so I probably gave too many rules to our coaches in that world. And then I swung the other direction. Like the pendulum just swings. It goes from one end to the other extreme, and we don't ever find the middle. The other extreme is just to say, throw your hands up and say, I'm not going to mess with them until they get to varsity anyway. I'm just going to focus over here. And so now I don't even pay attention to our younger levels, and those coaches just do whatever they want. They don't know any better, and just kind of throw your hands up and ignore it. And so that's usually the two different ways as a coach that we handle younger levels of football. Where the truth, and hopefully we've kind of driven it home at the podcast today, is in the middle. You can't micromanage and you can't ignore. You got to go lead, and that's what's tough. It's tough to actually step up and lead. It's easy to dictate and it's easy to ignore. Leading is hard, and you got to figure out a way to do that.
Absolutely. Those are great points, Coach.
Could I jump in on that too? Because
Of course.
I want to give a shout out to Coach Simpson. You had a lot of good stuff here. I would say this as a head coach of a varsity program, because we're discussing this from the top down and how the junior high fits into it or sub-varsity fits into it. If you are that top guy and if you're listening out there, take care of those sub-varsity coaches. I'll remember this. So I'm newly married, probably less than 6 months. I'm substitute teaching. I'm broke. And I'm at Capitol High School in Helena, Montana, and Coach Pat Murphy, who's the head coach at the time, brings me in the office and he goes, "Hey, thank you for volunteering for us. I appreciate it." And I was there. I was doing the varsity stuff and I'm asking these guys questions and I'm just into it. And he goes, "Hey, here you go." He takes out his checkbook and he cuts me a check and he says, "Take your wife out for a steak." And I'll just never forget that. And then so when I went down, I left Helena, went down to Pine Bluffs. My principal looked at me and he says, "Okay, you're hired. You're going to do a good job for me, but here's the thing. You're going to be working for a month before you get paid. You better not be starving. You I have a freezer full of hamburger, and if you and your wife need it, you're over at my house."
That's awesome.
So I've had all these great head coaches that I've had the privilege to work under and learn from, and I'm not just saying take care of the guy that's just that not motivated, right? Like maybe there is a toxic coach, and do your best to help him, but maybe you got to cut a guy loose because one of the things I always try to tell myself is, I'm trying to make this fun, but I do want success. I do want I don't just rest on, I'm doing the right things or doing a good job. Like I need to win games. I need to, as Coach Simpson, you said, that kind of sets the tone for the culture going into high school.
Absolutely.
So as a junior high coach, it's kind of like I haven't done any coaching. I can say I've been working hard. I haven't done any coaching till they've showed some learning. I love John Wooden. Oh, do I
Uh-oh.
lose guys' feeds here?
Yep.
Oh, there
You're
you're
back.
back. Okay. I love John Wooden. One of his things was you haven't done any teaching until your student has showed some learning. And I think that's a big thing. That's a big struggle for me at junior high. I'd like to say I'm busting my tail, but to be honest, there's kids I coached really hard and they haven't shown any learning. I just I gotta keep doing it myself. It's just that never endless circle, thankless job. But again, if you're that head coach and you've got a guy somewhere below you, maybe it's that young guy, take care of him because you take care of good people, you end up paying that forward.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, appreciate you coming on the podcast today, man. We're going to start our closeout here. First of all, once again, mention our sponsors over at Ace Sports. Guys, if you're looking for the next big thing for your team, it is Ace Sports and those video boards. You can do basketball, you can do football, any sport, they've got an option for you from the biggest of the big, your grandest plans, whatever you could dream of, down to just getting some kind of an ad on your video on a current scoreboard. Reach out to those guys. Let them figure out what they can do for your program. Big ticket items, you need turf, you need a new stadium, you need bleachers, whatever you need. That's a great way to go about getting it, using them for fundraising. Social media, Coach Merrill, where can we find you if we wanted to reach out and converse with you about snowy football?
Snowy football. Well, it's been kind of a dry winter in Wyoming. We got a little bit of snow on the ground, but yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Gosh, I don't even know. I made this so many years. Allen Merrill 12. I don't know why I did that, but yeah, just my name, Allen Merrill 12 on Twitter.
Awesome.
And you can get a hold of me that way. So yeah, that's great.
Awesome. I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Of course, the DMs are always open too. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Great place to spend your off season. If you're looking to get better at something, there's some pretty cheap tiers in there. We still talk a lot of good football. Jump in there and become a better coach for next year. Coach Simpson, where are you at?
Man, all things FB Coach Simpson. So FBCoachSimpson.com, at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and FB Coach Simpson at gmail.com if you want to shoot me an email.
Awesome. Guys, make sure you're getting over to fbcoachsimpson.com and check out the Gun T system. He has got a ton of great things for sale and a lot of free products too. There's stuff all over the place there, from workbooks to help organize any position group to like obviously the grand scheme Gun T stuff. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. Coach Merrill, we want to thank you so much. One, for reaching out to get on the podcast. We love having guests. We want to talk to more. We can get in our own little chamber of me and Kenny just spouting the same stuff, which is great. I'm glad that I have found good coaches in the world that believe like me and see the world the same way. But of course, we love the outside influence too. So thank you so much for coming on the
Hey,
podcast today.
thank you for having me. If anyone out there is listening, wants me to get on, I love this. And, I've been a junior high coach a long time, but if anybody's got a varsity job out there, hit me up.
There we go. We have to start our own job board for the whole nation.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.